You're listening to the Wedding Biz Network, the voice of the creative entrepreneur.
Come on, y'all!
Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz. This is another episode of The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we talk about the interview of the week in a way that you can use to raise your own business to the next level. And before I introduce today's guest co-host, I want to mention last week's interviews. On Monday, Jennifer Stein, editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine, interviewed me about my reflections on 2020. I just wanted to kind of take that time to talk about how I was doing both with my businesses, the music business and the podcast, as well as personally. So that's a real different one for me. And then on Wednesday, I had a really fun conversation with Preston Bailey, in which he talked about how he's been doing during the pandemic and made a very big announcement. So if you like Preston Bailey, and I know you all do, you got to listen to last Wednesday's episode as well to see what it is he's announcing. So today's guest co-host is Sean Lowe. Sean, welcome back yet again. I think you've been on the most of anyone.
Well, thank you. I didn't know that. I'm very happy to know that. Happy New Year. I know it's a beginning of the year. And
thank you.
I'm certainly excited.
Indeed, yes. Happy New Year to you too. Yeah, so Sean, you have done a whole lot of the next levels with me, which I've really appreciated. And I want everyone to know, if anyone is listening for the first time to you, that you have a wonderful consulting firm called The Business of Being Creative, which is focused on providing practical advice to those in the business of being creative. And you have quite a client list, the who's who of the wedding industry and design community. And also, Sean hosts a podcast on the Wedding Biz Network called The Business of Being Creative, which comes out every single Tuesday. Sean, I think your show is really great. I urge everyone to check it out.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And today's guest who we're talking about is Marianne Bennett, founder and CEO of Element Music, a very successful and known music and entertainment company in the event industry out of New York City. So, Sean, obviously, being that I have a music and entertainment company, I mean, it was just so much fun to talk to Marianne. I mean, obviously, we have so much in common. And I know, given that you've helped me a ton with my businesses, that you know so much about my approach with music, and Marianne is just right on it. I mean, I thought right off the top, I loved how she talked about how she considers herself to be a music producer, in which she described it as having a vision and creating sound and concepts using artists to support a specific client. And so, it's how she communicates what she wants to do musically through songs and more. I just thought that was an interesting way, a little bit of a different angle on how she viewed herself.
Yeah, well, I personally love it. And I think that while she didn't specifically talk about it, I think what she's talking about, which I so love, is she deeply understands the difference between custom and personal. And the best way that I can explain that is it's the difference between couture and ready to wear. Even though, of course, they're playing, known songs and whatever it is that that has been done before, it's the way that she goes about it is such a custom level, as she calls it. It's a relationship. It's understanding who they are. It's creating new and different elements, taking the idea of that sound as what you call it as a producer and crafting that experience specifically for the client, which is different from ready to wear, which is, hey, this is the way we do it, and let me mix and match for you, which can be wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It can absolutely be wonderful. But the understanding is that it has been done before, right? And we're just taking what has been done before and applying it to you.
That's right.
Right? That's different,
yeah,
right?
It is.
And look, you spend a lot of money when you go into Emporio Armani and buy a suit, or Paul Smith and buy a suit. You do understand, though, it wasn't just made for you, but it's wonderful for you. So she understands the difference between those two things and the value that someone who truly wants custom, that is entirely crafted just for them and in a lot of ways has not been done before, is what she does so brilliantly. And she calls it relationship. She calls it music production. And I was such a fan. I love it.
Yeah. And, I wanted to, as opposed to assuming how she goes about doing it, I really wanted to hear her talk about it. And she said that it's, as you know from listening to the interview, it's about really getting to know the clients ahead of time and and I really resonate with this, not just the music choice and the taste, but she wants to get to know them as people, like planners and designers are doing. And it's kind of a similar process, like finding out how do they want how do the clients want their guests, right, to feel. And so, Marianne was talking about how she gets this intuitive sense what to do musically once she can understand a lot about who they are and also what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah, it's about that custom experience. And to me, some of the things she talked about, which is so critical for everything I believe in, is that she's a storyteller.
Right. That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And she knows that her job as the storyteller is to take all of that information that they give her and the relationship that's created and put it through her filter, her brilliant musical filter, and deliver that story back to them in a way they never would have done for themselves. Right? They never could have done it for themselves. So that's different from just playing their favorite songs. That's just telling their story in a way that's so incredibly compelling. And so she very much understands that she is the producer, she's the storyteller. It's her responsibility to tell the story. It might be their story, and then the idea, the grist for it is theirs, but she's the one responsible for telling it. Right. And therefore, she's the one who is in control of it and is the one that's crafting the narrative, if you will. And so she knows where it all goes. Right. They don't. And I love that for her because that's what she's doing. Right. And how she's interpreting what she's hearing into something that's uniquely hers. Right. So that's what was so compelling for me is that it is when I'm listening is that it's not like she's doing something where it's really their show. It isn't, right? It's Marianne's show through their eyes, right? And that's how that's supposed to be perceived. Yeah, and I love it.
Yeah, I like how you're framing that. Do you want to hear behind-the-scenes stories of some of the most influential music industry pros around? Check out my other podcast, The Music Makers. You can find the show on your cell phone's podcast app or at themusicmakers.com. Again, that's The Music Makers. I like to get into a lot of details, obviously, in addition to getting their backstories. And, I was asking her, and I think I'll leave this mostly to people, just go back and listen to the entire interview, but specifics, at least some examples of how did she get there? And,
yeah, God,
and that was interesting. Like, for example, I will say to people, one of the things I do when I first talk to a client who I'm directly dealing with from my company is, let's just completely for now set aside this wedding and my band that you've hired and all of that. Just tell me what are some of your absolute favorite bands? Like if you could have anyone you want. She has a different angle at getting information like that, which I love. She talked about saying to them, tell me about your favorite concerts and what were those experiences like at those? In other words, I would take it further as saying, why is that a favorite concert of yours? And I think that obviously it reveals information that again, for her helps her to intuitively be able to make them a part of her creative process, And so it's interesting to hear her, her angles at how she gets there.
Well, the thing that I love about it, the culmination of what you're saying and what she said, and I love you on that podcast too, because I get the feel that where you're both headed is that it's not just about enjoying the entertainment. It's about the experience. And once you get to the experience, you get, how do you feel? So her job, as she said over and over, is like, I want to make you feel something. It's because if I make you feel something that inspires you based on what we talked about, then that feeling will be indelible, right? It's the feeling, it's the value of the feeling in the moment, whether she was talking about, as she was saying, like, I loved your dialogue about ceremony, like how I get you to feel about the ceremony, right? Is it going to be sleepy? Is it going to be, what is it going to be? How is it going to set the stage? So I need you to feel something when you walk in, right? I need you to feel it. And then how you both talked about the cocktail hour was remarkable, like, because how you want somebody to feel about what's to come is the goal, right? Which has very little to do with what the actual music is, right? because if I can get you to feel something with a particular way of going about music, it's not about, like as she said and what you said, it's not about tempo or type or whatever. It's about what am I crafting to get to you start with the feeling and back into the music is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because it's interesting. So many companies, so many music companies just say, whatever, let's book a piano player. They'll play whatever. They'll play some jazz or we'll have a string quartet. And all that's really nice. But we're talking about taking it to a whole nother level. Like, even if you do have just a solo keyboardist, they should be, building and they should play stuff that's really recognizable and not just do. I mean, look, I love jazz and a lot of these cocktail piano players will play jazz. I love that. However, at that crowd, again, this is what connects the ceremony to the reception where it's the blowout party. You got to play some more recognizable music that's builds and builds and builds and is even, some of the current hit music. But, Sean, another area I want to get in before we close for today is also, how I like to talk to a lot of guests about how do they balance the art and the business. That's one of the big reasons we hire you, for your consulting is that. And I like how she talked about, here we are the whole time along talking about the relationship with the clients and with music, our relationship. So she was saying that for her, the key with the business of creative companies is to view it as a relationship. In other words, how do you have a creative relationship with the business aspect? That is cool.
Of course, that tickles me because that's everything for me.
Right.
And if you listen to any of our next levels, you listen to any of our work together. That's the whole point. Is that my strength, of course, is being creative in business. I couldn't draw a stick figure, and you never want to hear me sing. But I fundamentally believe that what she was talking about and what is so refreshing to hear is that the idea that business is not creative, but art is creative, is why so many creative businesses are boring, right? And really boring. And what she was saying, which I love, is like, why? You can be equally creative in the business and how the business develops the relationship to create better art. Right. So that the business is there to nurture the art because the business itself is creative in what it's asking about, how it gets paid, what the relationship is, and how that journey is manifested. Clearly, that's my wheelhouse, but it's also hers. And she deeply understands that a creative business relationship, right? So in all the ways you might phrase that punctuation, the relationship is itself creative, the creative business, how the business is going to supply creativity, and all of that is in the relationship of the business that's there to nourish the art. And that is where so many creative businesses fall down, is because they believe that the art is there to nourish the business. And it's the other way around, right? So because if you do that, then naturally the art will serve the business, because the better the art is, the more the business will be served. And if the more creative the business is, the better art will be. And it's this upward spiral. And she deeply gets that. And so I was thrilled to hear it, thrilled to say, well, why does it have to be that way?
Yeah.
Because effectively that's what she was saying, is why does it have to be that way, that we have to do things X, Y, and Z, right? That we have to play for hours. She didn't say anything specific about business. And I'm grateful for that, because you guys were I kind of wanted you to keep on going with what you did in that dialogue, because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
But as she was saying, is I have deep faith that what she does is unique to her, right? And the custom experience, and it's how she needs to get paid to do what she does, to create great art and to tell a great story. She gets paid what she needs to get paid to tell a great story.
That's right.
That's what she's saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I've interviewed now a handful of really major music and entertainment companies, and everyone has that same. The ones at the top have that same philosophy. We're not just booking a band. We're not just booking a string quartet, but it's obviously telling the story of the client through music. So, well, that is all we have time for today. Sean, listen, thanks again. Always love having you on.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's so fun to talk like this. And everyone should check out the site of our guest, Marianne's company. It is elementmusic.com. Her social media handles on Facebook and Instagram are Element Music NYC. And you can find all of this in the show notes at our website at theweddingbiz.com. And then, Sean, your business website is The Business of Being Creative. And your Instagram handle, SeanLowe1, the numeral 1, SeanLowe1. And then also finding Sean's show, The Business of Being Creative, on your podcast app or going to theweddingbiznetwork.com. And I want to mention next week's episode, which is going to be featuring Matthew Myram, who is a brilliant rendering artist and so much more. We get into what that's all about. And it's a really fascinating conversation, very different for the Wedding Biz. So be sure to tune in on Monday. And so we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.